Welcome back. It's Friday of week 12. You've done so incredibly well. And here's the question. How do you feel right now? I'm asking from two perspectives. Like, for example, how do you feel in your body? Have you lost weight? Have you made health gains? Are there symptoms that are gone? Are there pains that have been relieved? How do you feel in your body right now? The second reason I'm asking this question is, how do you feel in your self-esteem? And why I'm asking you this is that a very consistent bit of feedback that we get from clients at this stage of the program goes like this. Hey, Eric, I've tried all kinds of different diets over the years. I've been able to stick with them for a short period of time, but this is the first time that I've really adhered to something for 3 whole months. So if that's where you are, you're watching this video, I just want to say congratulations. And I understand that that may not mean perfect adherence. For some of you, it does. Congratulations. For some of you, it doesn't. For some of you, you had this slip, that slip, some accidental slips, some willful slips. All great learning experiences. Here's the big difference, again, from feedback we get from our clients. It's really weird. In the past, if I had a slip, it would be over. But this time I had a slip, I watched what happened in my body, I noticed what happened in my mind, and I just got right back on the program. So I want to say to you, you're watching this video right now, it's week 12, you've been at this for 3 months. Congratulations. And I'm ready to enhance you. That's right, it's enhancement day again. So the question's got to be, what am I going to take away this time? Or what am I going to add in? What possibly could be the change this week that we're going to make? Well, remember, before I announce it, what's really important is that you remember that you have the buffer zone in front of you. So when I announce this enhancement, I want you to know that you have the buffer zone. So you can either accept the enhancement immediately, or you can wait until Monday when the enhancement officially kicks in. So here's the enhancement. Are you ready? This week is going to be your first week of simply living WildFit. Not necessarily on the challenge, not paying attention to my fundamental rules of the challenge, but living WildFit. In other words, beginning life under your own guidance. In a very real sense, the way I'd like you to think about this is, you've been in flight school and now you're about to take your first solo flight. And I'm going to be able to speak to you. I'm going to be able to speak to you through your headphones, but it's going to be up to you how you live this week. Now, how does that feel? Of course, I'm going to give you some guidelines, and we're going to go quite deep into some principles that help people in the living WildFit world. So I'm going to share those things with you. They're not rules that you have to follow. They're the guidelines of WildFit. They're the overall principles of WildFit so that you now can make decisions for yourself. I want to make a very important distinction here, that when you're on the WildFit challenge, you're following a very structured process. A very structured process that's designed to create specific nutritional responses in your body and designed to create specific emotional changes in your mind. Those changes are designed for a specific result. For example, the spring season that we put you into is not a natural version of spring. I don't believe it would have been very regular for nature to provide only proteins and only vegetables. I think root vegetables and honey would have been out there occasionally. So even in spring, there would have been some level of carbohydrates. The challenge is that most people have been slamming their system with carbohydrates for so long that they've got a problem. And so we go to that extreme version of spring as a hack. And so I'm going to share with you the differences between the WildFit Challenge and the overall concept of living WildFit so that this week you can do it. This week it'll be under your own direction. So some of you will say, well, you know what? I still have weight to lose. I want to do it. I'm going to go right back into deep spring. Some of you are going to go, well, you know, I still have weight to lose, but I'm going to experiment with just normal spring. Some of you are going to say, hey, you know, I'm in category 1. I don't really have any more weight to lose. I'd like to spend some time in summer this week coming up. Or you know what? I've really been missing all kinds of tropical fruits, and I'm going to really have fall. I'm going to have lots of pumpkins and fruits, and I'm just going to, and rice and all the other stuff. And then some of you are going to go, you know what? I'm just going to go back to the way my life was before. By the way, good luck with that. Here's what I mean by good luck with that, because if you decide to stray too far, here's something you need to know. In the past, many of you, not all of you, but in the past, many of you, your diet was so convoluted in terms of the inclusion of non-functional foods that the messages that your body were sending you were confused at best. In other words, there are very many people who are actually lactose intolerant that had no idea they were. There are a lot of people who are gluten intolerant that had no idea they were. And so what we're going to find at this point is that when you begin to go into this process. If you veer too far away, you may just find that your body communicates with you a lot more honestly about the foods you're eating. So let's talk about living WildFit. This is going to be your first week like this. And so let's talk about how it works. Remember, one of the key principles, and I'm going to run through all the principles of WildFit with you. One of the key principles of WildFit is that the word diet is fundamentally flawed in the way we use it today. Language is a very funny thing. Language changes and morphs with time. A word can mean one thing in one century and begin to mean something else in another century. If you look at the word ironic, for example, ironic is a word that is currently morphing right before our eyes. Ironic used to have a very clear definition. I'll give you an example. President Ronald Reagan was never shot. He was in fact hit by a bullet that bounced off his bulletproof limousine. That's irony. Irony. The limousine was designed to prevent him from being shot, but because the limousine was designed to prevent him being shot, the bullet bounced off it and he was therefore hit by the bullet. Irony. A black fly in your Chardonnay, to quote Alanis Morissette, is not irony, but what will happen as a result of pop culture is the word will change over time. Well, that's begun to happen to the word diet. You see, in every other area of natural science, diet means lifestyle. We know that an elephant's diet involves eating 200 kilograms of grasses and barks and plants and fruits and drinking 7 liters of water. We know that a cheetah's diet involves hunting and gazelles and eating 2 kilograms of fresh meat and then moving on and doing the same thing the next day if they're lucky. We know that a leafcutter ant does not even eat leaves. It takes the leaves back and composts them and it farms aphids. We know that the word diet means lifestyle for every other species on Earth. For us, the word diet has been hijacked, much the way Alanis hijacked ironic. Because now the word diet means, ironically, it means not your lifestyle. Isn't it true? What it means is a temporary alteration to your normal eating patterns in order to achieve a short-term goal. It means I'm temporarily going to change what I normally do because I would like some short-term result. And so I want to be really clear that when I say that WildFit is not really a diet, I'm actually wrong. It is. It's about getting as close as we can to a functional human diet and not a fad diet and not a boomerang diet. So with that in mind, let me share with you some of the core principles of WildFit that will help to guide you through the phase of living WildFit. Are you ready? The core principles of WildFit are here to give you, let's say, organizing principles. It would be very easy, for example, to produce a list of foods. You should go eat these foods, and to produce a list of foods, don't eat those foods. And we'll give you some of those things. What's more valuable, though, is to give you what are called organizing principles so that you get to a place where you can actually make decisions on your own, so that you don't constantly have to be curious about, does this food work? Does that food work? So that you understand the organizing principles. The first principle of WildFit is that the word diet means way of life, not temporary alteration to your eating patterns. It means way of life. That's just something to think about in terms of choosing your direction in life. We don't go on diets, we go off a diet. And the question is, what is your diet? That's the core thing. And that feeds really nicely into the second principle of WildFit, and that is that every species on Earth has evolved their own specific diet, and that means fundamentally two things. It means that they've evolved nutritional dependencies upon certain things and particular capacities for processing certain biological material. Okay, that's a bit of a fancy way of saying this. If I am a beaver, I can eat wood and extract all the useful vitamins and minerals that are in it. If I am a termite, I can do the same. If I'm a termite, I can go and eat the wood and I can extract the vitamins and minerals from that wood. But as I am neither a termite nor a beaver, I cannot eat wood. Are there vitamins in the wood? Yes. Could I create a fantastic video, a great website talking all about the incredible, valuable vitamins and minerals in wood and how it's the next superfood? Yeah, I could, but there'd be a major problem. You don't have the teeth or the digestive system to extract those nutrients from the wood. Therefore, it's not a superfood for you. And so it's really important to remember that we've evolved specific nutritional requirements and particular food processing capabilities. In other words, there are specific things that we need to eat and there are specific nutrients that we need to have. Good. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. It's important to recognize that as a species, we all share some fundamental nutritional requirements. There are some core vitamins and minerals that we all need to have. There are important proteins and amino acids and things that are essential to us. We need to have them. And there are some differences. Men and women, for example, it could be argued that we have different requirements for protein. It could be argued that men require more than women and that women are capable of going without proteins for much longer than men are. You could also argue that there are some other sensitivities, and all I want to point out to you is that so far in every case that I've taken a look at, and I've gone out to take a look at the blood type diets and the genotype diets and the diets that appeal to a person's ego. It's like, oh my God, I found the diet specific for you. 9 times out of 10, and really I'm saying the truth is 10 times out of 10 because I have yet to see something different. I'm not saying it's not out there, but as yet I haven't seen it. What I'm going to tell you is that almost always when a diet purports to be specific to you, all it's really talking about is given sensitivities. In other words, some people are sensitive to wheat and some are not. That does not mean that you should be having wheat or at least large amounts of wheat in your diet. There are some people that are lactose intolerant and some people are not. But as we've discussed in this program and in the bonus video on dairy products, they have no place in our diet whatsoever, no matter what. Like they just don't have a place in our diet. I know this is a little bit of a challenge for some people. I can tell you, for example, I'm a very big fan of Ayurvedic medicine, and I really like it. I really like the ideas and the principles. There's some beautiful wisdom in there. I do challenge it a little bit when it comes along and says, hey, you belong to this dosha, and a nice glass of warm milk might be a good idea for you. That is not a nutritional prescription. That's a symptomatic prescription. It's basically saying you can have it because it's nice and calming and it'll help you feel sleepy, and as you're not lactose intolerant, it won't give you a stomachache. That does not mean for a moment that it's good for you, and it certainly doesn't mean that you require it. And so, in this second principle of WildFit, what we're saying is humans belong to our own species, and our species has evolved specific nutritional requirements and the ability to process certain biological material to get those requirements met. Ergo, we should be living as close as we can to the human diet, which feeds right into the third principle. The closer you live to that diet, the more health you will experience. Now, remember, it's really important that we then go on to the next principle, which is this, that fruits and vegetables and all these healthy foods, they don't fight disease. That's backwards thinking. The next time you see a blog that says, eat these 5 foods, they're flu fighters, or eat these 3 foods, they'll fight this disease, or here's some cancer-fighting foods. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. What I'm going to suggest to you instead is that there are certain nutrients we need. And when we don't get them, we get sick. Fruits and vegetables and all these healthy foods, they do not fight disease, but the absence of them contributes to it. This is a very important WildFit principle because you see, as long as we think of foods medicinally, as long as we think of foods as a treatment, then what that means is we only need them once we're sick. And let's be really clear. And what is the old expression? An ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. That's what we're talking about here. Fruits and vegetables and the other healthy foods in the human diet do not fight disease. The absence of them contributes to it. The absence of them increases your susceptibility to those diseases. The next principle of WildFit is that the human diet is cyclical. We did not evolve to eat the same things week in and week out. The number of times I bump into families and they go, we have this routine. We have Fish Friday and Pizza Wednesday, and that's our season. We have a 1-week season and we live it over and over again. And frankly, even if you don't have that, the vast majority of us make no real changes for the seasons. We simply eat what's available to us. Fruit, for example, is available all the year round. And that, by the way, is a fairly new thing in our diet. In fact, I want to say about 15 years ago, I moved to Ireland, and I moved to Cork, Ireland, in the very south. And when I got there, what I was shocked to find in the grocery store was that you could basically only buy oranges, apples, and occasionally bananas. But you could not get pineapples unless there was a particular season and maybe they'd be around for 2 weeks. You could not get a lot of the exotic fruits. Grapes were hardly ever to be found because they had not yet figured out distribution systems. Maybe they didn't have the demand yet where they were bringing in fruit all year round. Where where I had grown up in Canada, you could basically get anything you wanted most of the year around. And so it's really important to remember that is not how we evolved. We evolved to eat cyclically. We have seasons. There's supposed to be a season where plant life is aplenty and we're eating tons of it. And why would we bother going out hunting when there's all this abundance of plant life right around us? Oh, until maybe the craving kicked in for fat or flesh. And then that would drive us to go and hunt. And then there might be a season where there was really good hunting and we'd be increasing our meat intake a great deal, which incidentally might cause an increased level of acidity in our bodies, which, remember, might cause us to extract some calcium from our bones to balance it off. Oh, but then when the meat season passed away, we'd move into the next season, and then we'd repay the loan to the bones. We would cycle our fat on and off our body. Remember that since fat is more than just stored energy, stored water and energy, it's also an insulator. It wraps up the toxins and acids in your body. You don't want the same fat sitting on your body all the time. You want your fat to come on and go off, and come on and go off. Seasons. Our DNA developed with seasonal living. And so if we think that we can live without running through these seasons, we have a problem. The concept of an RDA, or recommended daily allowance, is insanity. Nature would never have provided us with the perfect suite of vitamins and minerals and proteins and all that stuff in a single day, but it might over the course of a year. The next WildFit principle is a little dark, but it's real simple. The food manufacturing and marketing industry is, on the whole, at least as evil and manipulative, if not more, than the tobacco industry ever was. We need to understand that they get their profits by getting us to eat. They get their profits by getting us to eat more than we need to eat. The average person in the Western world is eating 2 to 3 times the amount of food that they require, and yet somehow managing to get none, or let's be clear, way less of the vitamins and minerals they really need. And so what's going on? Why is it that we're eating so much more food than we need, and yet we're still malnourished? What's going on with that? Profitability. We need to be very careful about the way the food marketing and manufacturing industry influences us. You need to be very clear that they know how to create an advertisement that's going to make you feel good. And in that peak moment of feeling good, they're going to show you their logo. They're going to anchor you. They're going to hypnotize you. They're going to do everything they can to get you to change your mind about what you eat. They're going to get you to believe that certain foods belong on that day. I mean, after all, there's nothing more American than apple pie. Really, apples come from Kazakhstan. Apple pie is not American any more than it's from Kazakhstan. But the marketing of these things has become genius. And so we need a black belt in the defense against the dark arts and say, I will not succumb to the manipulation. I will get angry when I see sugar on the label. And I will remember one thing, that while democracy may be fundamentally broken in the Western world in a lot of ways, you have one thing you can vote with, and that is your money. You can vote with your pounds, you can vote with your euros, you can vote with your dollars, you can vote with your pesos. Get out and vote with them. And what that means is you go to the store and you buy the right things. And the more often you're buying the right things, the food manufacturers will hear that and they will produce more of them. Right now, what they're doing is killing us. And we need to fight back by forcing a new eating paradigm. We need to recognize that it's not even that they're evil, it's just that they're profit-seeking. And if we can show them that the real profits are in providing us with healthy foods that don't have refined sugar in them, that are not laden with wheat, that don't have dairy products in them, they will make more of them. That's a very important principle. You are now, potentially, it's your choice how you live forward from here, but right now, you're a member of the food revolution, and we do vote with our money. We have already found with our clients stories where they've written back to us and said, hey, my local butcher has started bringing in on a regular basis venison and bison and stuff like that because people around have been asking more for it. And we had a really great story where the client wrote to us and said, hey, I went in there, I asked if they could get me some really healthy sausages from natural meats, organic and free range and all that kind of stuff. They had them, but the problem is they were putting syrup in the sausage mix. And I went in last week and they said they changed them all. They changed them all because 2 other clients had come in and also asked for sausages without the syrup in them. So we vote with our money. We recognize that the food manufacturing industry is actually in it for profits. And if we can demonstrate to them that their profitability is in providing us with health, they will change and we can change them. Another WildFit principle that's so important for you to consider is that nothing Nothing tastes as good as health and vitality and longevity feels. Have you ever had that experience? Have you ever been sick where you've been like maybe the flu or something like that, and you kind of get to the point where it's like, God, is life even worth living if it's like this? You know, humans have this strange way of creating permanency from the way they're feeling in the moment. And so people can often feel that feeling of, I'm just feeling so sick, and if life is like this, I just don't want to live it. What I want to put to you is something else, and that is, we feel pain acutely. We feel pleasure passively. What I mean is that other than intense pleasure, the general pleasure of health is something that we really take for granted. You see, one of the challenges that we have in marketing health programs to people is that sometimes people go, wow, I'd love to do your challenge, but it's really expensive. Really expensive? Compared to what exactly? Compared to the fact that the average American that 1 out of 3 Americans is going to die from cancer. And I'm using Americans just because I know that statistic, but it seems pretty consistent in the Western world. Now, hang on, I'm not bringing that up for scary sake alone. I'm talking about the cost of society. Do you know what somebody costs when they take 5, 10, 20 years to die of cancer? Do you know what it costs when somebody takes 5 or 10 years to be treated to get on the other side of cancer? We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars per person. Now, you may be thinking, yeah, but it doesn't cost me that. It doesn't cost me that. And your program costs all this money that I have to pay. Okay, I understand that. I get it. But it does cost you that because you're paying for it in your taxes if you live in a country with universal health care. So I want to be really clear that what happens is that when people have health, they take it for granted, and the only time they start thinking about improving their health is once they've lost it. And so it's really important to recognize the next time you look at a piece of food that you think of as a treat. Remember, treating you badly. When you look at that food and you think, oh, look, it's a treat, then I want you to think about it. I want you to think, wow, that treat is going to taste good for a few seconds. I mean, really, for a few seconds, right? Is that worth it? Because the cumulative impact of those treats might result in something as small as a cold, or maybe a flu, or maybe some allergies, or maybe a little arthritic pain as the inflammation begins to build up. Or maybe that day where the doctor says, you know what, we need to take a closer look at that. That's what that treat might lead to. So I want to be really, really clear that when you evaluate your decisions about treating yourself badly, then I want you to think about, is it really that yummy? Is it really that good? No, nothing tastes as good as health and vitality and longevity feels. The next principle of WildFit is very simple. Everything in moderation, right? That's what people say. Well, in WildFit, we say something very similar. Everything in moderation includes your health. Think about that. The number of times over the last over 20 years that I've been considered a food crank because I'm fussy about my food, people come up to me and they go, well, Eric, come on. You take it so seriously all the time. You know, look, Eric, everything in moderation. Now, I don't know if you have that expression in your country, but it's a very common expression in England. It's very common in Canada and America and in other countries around the world. So here's what I want to say to you. Everything in moderation includes your health. So, are you okay with moderate health? Are you? Because moderate health means the flu once or twice a year. It means allergies. It means all kinds of other things. It may, frankly, statistically mean really bad things toward the end of your life or sooner. And so everything in moderation includes your health. The next principle of WildFit we've touched on a number of times, but it's this simple. When you treat yourself well. When you treat yourself well. What that means is that consider what treat really means. You see, right now, the word treat is an emotionally linked word. I'm going to treat myself. In other words, I think I'm going to feel better when I have this. But then you have to recognize that you are here in this physical body, which has to get you to the end. And the issue is, are you giving it what it needs? Are you giving it what it needs? Or is that treat going to be functional or not for the body? Is it going to cleanse the body or is it going to clog it up? When you treat yourself well. I remember speaking with one of my clients who's also a good friend of mine, and we were talking about the various things that might cause him to trip up. You know, here we are moving into the living WildFit phase of his life, and he's like, I said to him, well, you know, what are some of the things that might cause you to trip up? Where do you think you might make exceptions? And he goes, yeah, you know, sometimes I go for a really good workout, and I just feel so good that I just want to reward myself, so I want to treat myself. And I go, okay, so, what might you treat yourself with? And he goes, well, sometimes I might have that might be a good time to give myself permission to have a soft drink. I might have a fizzy drink of some kind. Or, sometimes that night what I might want to do is, I might have a bowl of ice cream, just a nice dessert to say, hey, you really treated yourself. And I said, okay, here's my question for you. If you had a high-performance sports car, and you just took it on a gorgeous drive, 100 miles an hour on the Autobahn where there's no, speed limits. I'm not promoting speeding here. Driving super fast, really enjoying taking the corners, and now you bring it in for maintenance. You want to make sure the oils are replaced and the fluids are taken care of. You want to make sure the tires are checked. Do you want to put bad quality stuff into that car? Do you, after it's done all that work? You see, and human bodies are very different because you see, we don't simply burn the fuel that we put in, we assimilate it. We make it part of us. We take from it and build our body. And so after that incredibly intense workout, do you really want to treat yourself badly? And he had a little bit of a paradigm shift. So when you treat yourself, remember that yourself includes your body. So when you treat yourself, treat your body well. And the last principle of WildFit, as they are today, is so simple, and that is leading is better than pushing. At this point, I'm not even talking about you anymore, although in a very interesting way I am. You see, what happens very often when people adopt a new lifestyle, they go, you know what, I've turned a new leaf, and I'm gonna eat more leaves, and I'm gonna eat healthier, and I'm gonna be healthier all around. This is my new life, I'm so inspired, and you should do it too. Do you know that there's pus in the milk? Do you know that the average American eats 154 pounds of sugar, and you could become a mini me? You could be out there saying all this stuff to you, that you could be doing that and saying it to all the other people, but here's a big difference. You asked me to say this to you. And if you go out and say this stuff to other people when they haven't asked for it, then here's what's going to happen. You're going to push, and the basic laws of physics are going to apply. They're going to push back. If you walk up to a wall and you push on it within a certain amount of pressure, that wall immediately pushes back with that same amount of pressure. If you push people, they will resist. If you lead them, they will follow. Now, this is never more applicable than in families. We have story after story after story where someone has come into the challenge and their husband or wife didn't want to do it with them. And they had kids in the house, young kids, teenage kids, all kinds of different varieties. We've had people living in houses with their parents where their parents are like, this is just stupid. We're not going to do that. And here's what we found. The people who try to push, the people who try to preach, the people who try to convince fail almost every single time. But the people who simply get on with it, the people who make their alkalizers, the people who are eating healthy, the people who are making good decisions, find that the people that live around them begin to notice. They begin to notice and they begin to ask why. They start to notice the physical changes on somebody's body. Haven't you had lots of that already? Many of you have, I know, where people have said to you, holy cow, what have you done? I'll have what you're having. Lead, don't push. When you lead, they will follow. And I've seen this happen where young children, we just a few days ago got a message from a woman where she says, my 7-year-old decided not to have French fries. She just said, I don't want the French fries. Then she ordered a side salad and ate it. And then when she ordered a drink, she ordered water. She's never ordered water in her life. And I didn't ask her to do those things. She just did it because she observed me changing. You see, Homo sapiens, our fundamental, our single best version of learning is through observation. And so if you would like your children to learn something, then do it, right? And by the way, we've had the same thing happen with obstinate teenagers. Obstinate teenagers are looking, going, I don't know what fad you're into now. I'm going to McDonald's with my friends. And yet, even the teenagers have come around and said, well, I'm not going to do everything you're doing, but could you make a little extra of that green smoothie? I'd like to have some this morning. In fact, I'll share with you how I did it to my son. You see, I didn't want to push him. I know that that doesn't work. And so what did I do? I got up in the morning and I made the beginnings of an Alka-Geyser Mild. What I'm really saying is I made a fruit smoothie, right? I made this fruit smoothie, just fruit, no greens in it, right? Nice sort of pinky yellow, nice fruit colors. And I made that and I poured his portion out of the blender and gave it to him. Then I grabbed handfuls of kale and spinach and greens and I threw it in there and boom, it turned green. And then I poured one for my wife Elise and then I poured one for me and then we didn't say a thing. We just started drinking our green smoothies. And you know what? Children watch, don't they? In fact, they start watching at about 4 months old. I've noticed it because I have a 4-month-old at home right now. And what's really fascinating is 2 weeks ago, You could eat in front of her and she wouldn't pay any attention at all. Now I pick up a piece of mango and put it in my mouth, and this is what she does. She watches, she goes, and then as soon as I put it in my mouth, she goes. They start watching at 4 months old and they never stop. And so my son, sitting over there with his pink fruit-colored smoothie, he takes a look at us with our green smoothies and he says, "Hey, how come yours is green?" And I said, "Oh, that's just the adult version of the smoothie. And doesn't every teenager want to grow up?" He goes, "What do you mean the adult version?" And I go, "Well, it's got all these like spinach and green stuff that you don't like, that kids don't like." And he's like, "Well, how do you know I wouldn't like it?" And I go, "Because you never want to have the green stuff. Why would you want to have it now? I mean, it's not for you." And by the end of this conversation, he said, "Can you make mine green too?" And then he started having the green smoothies every day. We lead, we don't push. Those are the core principles of WildFit. So those are the core principles of WildFit. Now, let's talk about some operating principles around how you choose or how you decide whether a food is really appropriate or inappropriate, or how often you want to have it and so forth. So the first thing is that I'd like you to think in terms of 4 categories. I'd like you to think that all of the foods that are available to you fall into 4 categories. Are you ready for this? There are foods that you must have. That's it. That's your highest priority. There are foods that you must have. Because remember, one of the principles of WildFit is, hey, my health is determined by getting enough of the good stuff more than by getting rid of the bad stuff. In other words, fruits and vegetables don't fight disease. The absence of them causes it. And so what I'm saying here is that there are some foods that you must have that are imperative to your health. So what are those foods? Now, here's the thing. I'm now talking about a decision that you're going to make based upon the principles of WildFit. So not so much that I'm going to sit here and tell you which foods you must have, more than you're going to make a decision in your life. Where do you put foods? Which categories do you put them in terms of the way you want to live, in terms of your diet, your lifestyle? So some obvious suggestions might be that there are some things I suggest you must have, like you must have vegetables. You must have a high quantity of high quality vegetables and a variety of them throughout the year. I think that's reasonable to put those things into the must-have category. Also, I think it's reasonable to put fruit in the must-have, but seasonally. I think it's important to put high quality fats and proteins in the must category. But here's where you may make a different decision. Some of you are vegetarians, and so meat will not be in the must-have category. But if you're not a vegetarian, what I'm going to suggest to you is that meat, high quality, well-produced, ethically raised meat should be in the must category. That doesn't mean daily, it just means that you must have them from time to time. Water is a must, it must be in there. And so your core focus should be on the essentials. So these are what we're talking about as your choice for your WildFit essentials. What should be in there? Yes, we're giving you guidelines for this, but in the end, as we go through the rest of this table, you're going to see that there are going to be some choices you make, in a sense, as you choose your level of adherence as you move into the Living WildFit phase this week. So the next category we're talking about is something called WildFit Optional. It's optional. You don't have to have it. You certainly can. And as it's optional, you may not want to have it on any kind of daily basis. These are foods that we do not have a long-standing evolutionary relationship with, but don't seem to cause most people challenges. A great example would be the avocado. The avocado is a South American origin plant, which means evolutionarily we can't possibly have evolved a dependency upon anything in the avocado. And one would argue we may not even be all that good at processing them. That said, it appears there's some healthy fats in there, and there's some folic acid, and why not? In fact, a little sidebar for you. How about this? Avocado is reputed to be very good for pregnant women, right? It's supposed to be good for pregnant women. How about this? Isn't it shaped just a little bit like a pregnant woman? And by the way, it turns out that it takes something like 9 months for one to ripen. And as it turns out, they are full of folic acid. So we call it a WildFit optional food. You're not dependent upon it, but it's something that you can have optionally. Now, other categories, other foods that might fall into that category might be something like red and yellow peppers. These are plants that come again from the Americas. Tomatoes, eggplants. These are plants in the nightshade family. They're not ideal for us. We don't need to have them by any stretch of the imagination, but they're optional. If we had them from time to time, so be it. The next category below that would be something we call WildFit Rare. WildFit rarely. This is stuff that, you might do it from time to time, but really you wouldn't want to make a really big habit of it. And what I'm talking about here is things like, sprouted grain breads. Or you're going to begin to see this is where it's going to start to become about your judgment. It's going to start to become about how closely do you want to follow these principles in terms of the way you construct your life. Because now you've got this category of stuff that you want to have rarely. And some of you might want to include chocolate in this category. I don't recommend it, but you may want to. Some of you might want to put coffee in this category. You go, I took my holiday here from coffee and I'd like to put coffee back in. And so I might suggest if you do that I'd put it in this category called rarely, because of course you know my feelings on the daily consumption of it. So this category, this third category, is about foods that you want to have occasionally, that you want to have rarely. Okay? Now, the fourth category of food is what I would call WildFit rejected. Like, this is not a good idea, not even occasionally, just don't do it. And this falls into two categories. Foods where you just go, you know what, the payoff just isn't worth it. Like, you know what, a can of Coca-Cola, or a Pepsi, or, a cheap low-rent milk chocolate bar. I would personally suggest that you put those into this category of, I just don't do that anymore. And now we're talking about a very important distinction. This line that we're talking about, this line that separates the occasional from the never, that line is kind of like your identity line. It's the don't line. I just don't do that. Remember, when you make a decision about your identity, that has a huge impact on the way you live. For example, if you go over to a friend's house and they offer you some ice cream for dessert, and you say, oh, I don't really do that. I'm trying to cut down. What they hear at that moment is, you just need more convincing. Like any good salesperson, you just sounded like, you walk in to buy a new stereo and you go, I don't know if I can afford it. I'm not sure that it's the right one for me. What they hear in that moment is, push harder or find another stereo. They don't hear, you're not buying a stereo that day. Well, if you say to your friends, I don't know, I'm trying to cut down, what they hear is push, push, push. And they'll push for a couple reasons, because on one level, they kind of believe, you're denying yourself and you should allow yourself, you should treat yourself. But there's another reason, a little more insidious, and that is misery loves company. And here's what I mean. People want to have their treats. They want to have their desserts and stuff. And they don't really want to feel so guilty when they have them. And they do often feel a little guilt about it. And the only thing that's going to make them feel more guilty than eating it is you not eating it while they eat it. And so they may push you. So if you are weak in your determination, then they will be strong in their push. And so the don't line is where you write your identity and you go, no, I don't do that. So try that on for size. Imagine I come to your house, or I go to someone's house for dinner, and they go, oh, look, we've got ice cream for dessert. And instead of going, oh, I'm not really into that, or I'm trying to cut down, I just go, oh, no, thank you, I don't eat ice cream. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink Coke. I don't smoke cigarettes. No, I'm sorry, I don't eat refined sugar. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't eat processed foods. I'm not into the artificial chemicals and stuff, thank you. Do you hear the difference? The difference below the don't line is a sense of identity. And here's what's really interesting. The first couple times you use the don't line, here's what might happen. The food devil, right? Now, the food devil at this point is really probably getting more and more aligned with the food angel all the time. Sure, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, there still may be some emotional hungers that are lingering around, right? But the food devil's a little bit more on board. I mean, if you've stuck with it so far with minimal slippage, I think that's proof. But here's the thing. The very first time you go to a restaurant, or you go out, or you're shopping or whatever, and then you say out loud to someone else, oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't do that. Here's what'll happen. The food devil's gonna go, what? What did you just say? We don't do that? Oh, damn. Notice that it's not a moment for the food devil to start pushing. At that moment, what's going on is the food devil is learning who you are. And the don't line, the stuff that's below that, the below the line foods, are the foods that are the most damaging and the ones that cause the most cascading. In other words, you take a food, you go, I have a weakness for that food, man. If I eat one cookie, I eat the whole batch. If I have one donut, I'm having another donut the next day. If I eat bread, I just find myself craving bread. If you identify a cascade food, you may just want to put it below the don't line. If you can already think of good reasons to put refined sugar below the don't line, dairy products below the don't line, bad quality meats below the don't line, then you can just move it down there and practice with it. What I want you to do this week, since you're now living WildFit, is you're going to make decisions about how this works for you. I suggest, as a little fun exercise, you take a piece of paper and you put the lines across it and create the 4 categories and just write some examples of foods that you regard to be essentials, foods that you're happy to eat on a regular basis, foods that you think of as optional, I'll eat them from time to time, foods that you think of as occasional, I'll have them from time to time. I consider them a fairly neutral treat. And then foods that you say, I just don't do that. I just don't. And notice how that feels this week as you go into this whole model of living WildFit. That table can make a massive difference. It's a little mental model, but I'm telling you, as you put food into those categories, you can neutralize your friends, you can neutralize the peer pressure from the outside, you can neutralize the marketing, and you can neutralize the sugar monster, the food devil, and all the empty hungers. You can neutralize them by putting those foods below the don't line and saying, hey, that's just not who I am. I don't do that. Now, that brings us back to the first couple weeks of the program. And so I want to share something really exciting with you. For many years when we ran the program, this would have been your last video. And we didn't put people into this whole living WildFit thing. We just said, you go do it on your own. Great. And at the end of the video, I'd say, and I won't see you next week. And it was very sad for me and often very sad for our clients. We've made a change in this version of WildFit, and here's the great news, is that you are now moving into the buffer zone of living WildFit. You can choose, when do I begin living WildFit? Do I stay where I am right now? Am I gonna start opening the rules up over the weekend? You are gonna choose which season you're in right now. You may decide, you know what? I still have a lot of weight I'd like to lose. I'm feeling good with spring. I'm simply gonna stay in spring, because in the future, when I'm living WildFit, I am gonna wanna cycle in and out of spring, and so guess what? I'm gonna stay in spring. Some of you may decide, you know, I'm gonna move into summer and it's gonna start the minute this video is over. And some of you may decide you're gonna get a whole lot more adventurous than that, and you're gonna fully test this table and you're gonna see where the don't line is. Whatever you do this week is absolutely fine, provided you continue to learn from it. And in order to support you, guess what? This is not the final video. In fact, you're gonna get another video on Monday, and then another one on Tuesday, and then another little one on Wednesday, and a short one on Thursday, and then a final one on Friday to guide you through your first week of living WildFit. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it's almost like you've been learning to fly. And here you are, about to undertake your first solo flight. Only I'm gonna be in the tower and I'm gonna be talking to you every step of the way. And we're gonna guide you into this transition. Whatever season you choose, whatever rules you choose to follow, we're gonna be there with you to learn for the process, to learn through the entire way of doing this. And now I wanna remind you of some of the stuff to watch for. Remember to watch for the 6 hungers. Clearly watch these hungers, because as you potentially make changes in your rules and changes in your habits in this week coming up, some of the hungers can be brought back to life, right? Some of the echoes can be brought back to life. Remember that even for me, emotional hunger can come up. I'm gonna give you such a neat example of this. I spent the summer this year in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, where I largely grew up as a boy. And the reason we went back there is that Elise and I decided that we wanted our little girl to be Canadian, and so we went off and had our baby in Canada. And so there we were in Halifax. I hadn't been in Halifax for a long time. I found myself driving along one day and I was feeling a little tired and worn out from all the travel. I came around a corner and there was a Tim Hortons. Now, for those of you who don't know Tim Hortons, it's a donut chain named after a famous hockey player. And they make a huge variety of donuts and Timbits. Donut holes for the rest of you. But they just make a huge variety of them, and I have huge childhood memories about that. I mean, Tim Hortons was celebration time. Tim Hortons was reward time. Tim Hortons, where you were a good kid, we've got some celebration to do here. In fact, I remember distinctly as I drove around the corner, here I am in my 40s, way past refined sugar, way past wheat, not even a thought, they're way below the don't line for me, and there's the Tim Hortons, and I kid you not, my mind, the food devil suddenly go, wait a second, there's nostalgia in there. There's a major, powerful nostalgia hit for you right in that shop. You should go right now and get yourself a honey cruller. And also, they've got the maple dip in there. You're in Canada now, baby. Go for it. And the angel went like this. I'm not kidding you. The angel went, no, we're not going to do it. The angel, just for a second, thought it would be a fun idea. I'm not kidding you. Now, it was less than a second, but it happened. And so, hey, learn from it. By the way, it happened to me once, and I didn't do it, of course. And when I didn't do it, I built self-esteem, and then the food devil realized that's an argument they're never gonna win, and he didn't try one more time the entire months we were there. So what you're gonna do this week is pay close attention. Which of the hungers are being triggered? Let's be really clear. You should not be having thirst as a hunger, because you should be well hydrated from all the water you're drinking and all the water-based foods that you're eating. You should not have thirst as a hunger. You should not have nutritional hunger at this point. You are loading yourself full of really valuable nutrients. For many of you, the most you've ever done in your life, fantastic. You should not have nutritional hunger. So that leaves the rest of them. And the rest of them, they're really fake hungers. Those two are the only truly true hungers, right? I mean, even low blood sugar is not a real hunger. Low blood sugar is just an indication that your body has been burning a dietary, or I should say, like sugars from your food in that moment, rather than by metabolizing fat and creating its sugars. So you may have low blood sugar that comes up with that. That is not a real hunger. It's a physical condition as a result of a confused metabolism. So if you find yourself experiencing low blood sugar, you need to remember what you can do to push yourself into processing more fat than sugar. If you're having empty stomach hunger, we've talked about this a lot. Empty stomach hunger is not actually a hunger. It's a physical sensation that has been linked to hunger in the same way that Pavlov's dogs link the bell with the saliva. They ring the bell, the meat's coming, I'm gonna salivate. No, you have very often experienced an empty stomach while feeling hungry, because most people feel relatively hungry all the time. Come on. Haven't you ever felt hungry while you knew your stomach was full? So if it's possible to feel hungry while your stomach is full, isn't it equally possible that when your stomach is empty, that you're not hungry? That's exactly the case. And so really learn to figure out what the difference between these things are. And remember also that you may at times have a feeling that you need a feeling of variety. And if you start having a feeling of variety, this could be one of two things going on. One is a genuine craving for a variety of vitamins and minerals. Your body could be calling out and saying, hey, you need to look further. You need to scan the horizon. You need to find a greater variety of healthy foods. The other possibility is that there's an emotional hunger being triggered. They're very similar. There's like a fine line between the genuine desire for nutritional variety and the desire to move away from boredom. And that brings us to all the emotional hungers. When you are experiencing emotional hunger, let me remind you of the steps. The first step is to identify the emotion, the triggering emotion, the emotion you're having when the doubt comes up. So there I was driving along in my Jeep, and the thought popped up, oh look, you could go get a honey cruller. You could go get a maple dip. I had to immediately stop and look at the emotion I was having, and guess what? I was feeling a lot of uncertainty. I had a brand new baby in my life. I was barely getting any sleep. I had lots of work to do. Our business was growing really, really fast. We were having all kinds of issues. And so I had a general feeling of uncertainty. And it was like, oh, but you know what's really certain? The way a honey cruller tastes. You know what else is really certain? The way a maple dip tastes. That's very certain. And it's certain that it's right there, and I could go get it right now. So to remind you the steps, you look at the emotion you're feeling when the thought pops up. That is your triggering emotion. That's the emotion that you need to watch for. It's a dangerous one. You know that when that emotion comes up, that you need to figure out how to deal with it so that you don't have temptation, right? So once you've identified the triggering emotion, then the next step is to take a look and go, all right, if I go eat that honey cruller, if I go eat that thing, then the question has to be, what emotion am I hoping to move to? What's the resulting emotion I'm hoping for? Okay, so I come over here and I go, oh, I have it. It's a feeling of certainty and connection. I could feel like, oh, if I go in there, and nostalgia and memory, wow, okay. So you know what I did as I'm driving along? I thought, okay, I'm gonna think back to my childhood. And I'm gonna access the memory without eating it. And so I accessed the memory. I thought about all those times of having the honey cruller. And you know what I remembered? I remembered that when I ate one of them, I would get this filmy, yucky feeling in my mouth. And it was so sticky that water would not do it. The only way to clear that sticky feeling out of my mouth was either with a hot drink like a coffee or a tea, or with a Coke or a Sprite with the carbonation to peel it away. I had forgotten that entirely. But when I went back in to access the nostalgia, one of the emotions I was looking for here, the full memory of the food came back. And once I remembered that, there would be no chance I was gonna do that. That's disgusting. And then also, I thought, I'm also feeling a little uncertainty right now. And I thought, wow, why am I feeling that? Well, guess what? brand new baby, business growing like crazy in a city that, while I have lots of nostalgic feelings about, is not my home. And so I thought to myself, okay, what could I do right now to increase my feelings of certainty? I thought, well, I could do a little gratitude rant. Gratitude rants are so good for creating certainty. So I started thinking, and if you want to know how to do a gratitude rant, go right now onto YouTube and search for little girl gratitude. Little girl gratitude, and you will find the most incredible video of this little girl. She's like 3 or 4 or 5 years old, maybe she's a little older, and she's standing on the bathroom counter and she's saying, I'm feeling so lucky about my life. I love my family. I love my mom. I love my dad. I love my school. And she just goes through this incredible gratitude rant. You'll feel good just watching it. And so what I want to suggest is do a gratitude rant. That's what I did. I sat there and I thought, you know what? I feel so grateful. I have a beautiful, healthy baby girl. Her mother went through the most incredible labor process. She wanted to have a home birth, intervention-free. We had the baby right in our own living room, right there. Well, okay, it was an apartment we were renting for a few months, but it was still our living room. It wasn't a hospital with all that sterile rubbish. She had it exactly the way she wanted it. And I thought, you know what? We're economically protected. We're stable. We have a fabulous home in the Caribbean. We're going to be going back there again soon. I started thinking about all this stuff, and I was like, wow, I have certainty. So remember, you first analyze the feeling, the triggering emotion that might be getting in the way. Then you take a look and say, how can I satisfy that emotion other ways? How can I make sure that that emotion gets taken away? And by doing that, or one of the ways to do that is to say, hey, what's the target emotion? What do I think this food is going to do for me? How do I think this food is going to make me feel? And once I've identified that, then I can say, what are other ways to access that feeling? Because let's be very clear, even though that food may well give you that feeling, you and I both know it's short term. You and I both know that you're going to eat the food, gain the feeling, and then you're going to be right back here again later, which is exactly the way the food marketing companies want you to have it, because then you'll eat some more. So it's really important to pay attention to the hungers, and then inside the hungers, emotional hunger. If you allow those emotional hungers to take root, you've got a challenge, and all you need to do is smile at them and say, not today. Not today. Every single time you deny one of those emotional hungers, they get smaller. Every single time you deny them, because the opposite is true as well. If I'm feeling low and I feel like eating that donut is going to make me feel good, then I'm going to eat it, and guess what? For a time, I'm going to feel good. And the fact that I'm going to feel bad later is forgotten. The anchor that gets created is the taste plus the immediate feeling. So every time I eat that food, it's going to reinforce the idea that that food creates that feeling, even though it's a lie. By the way, if this sounds at all familiar to you, this is how a lot of addictive drugs work. Let's be really clear. You snort a line of Coke, which is something I've never done, but I understand from people that have, that you snort a line of Coke and you feel amazing, amazing. But of course, you don't feel so amazing a little while later. And then you snort another one and you feel amazing, and you don't feel so well a little while later. How about some people with alcohol, right? They go out and they drink and they have a fun time. Alcohol, fun time. Alcohol, fun time. Next morning, alcohol vomiting. Alcohol vomiting. And I know that's an extreme for some people, but what I'm saying is that often the consequences are too far removed away to provide a good lesson. That's why we've been focusing on the food timeline, which we're going to talk about in a minute. What I'm saying, though, is that part of the challenge with that food timeline is that if a food or a substance makes you feel good, even if it makes you feel really terrible later, right in that moment, the taste is linked to the good feeling. Taste is linked to the good feeling. And so in the future, you go, hey, I can have that good feeling with that taste. So that's very important, which of course leads naturally into the food timeline. And I want to remind you how this works. The food timeline is very careful. You want to pay attention step by step. So step one is, as we've already talked about with your emotions, what was the emotion that I was feeling before the decision to eat? Then once I made the decision to eat, how did that change the way I felt? Then when I had the food in front of me and took the first bite, how did it really taste, and how did I then feel? Then, as I went into the second and third and subsequent bites, how good did they taste, and how did I really feel? And what we begin to notice at this point is that the really positive feelings that come from this food actually often come from the decision to eat it and not the eating. From the decision to eat it and not the actual eating. And we also begin to notice that often the second, third, and subsequent tastes are empty. They're not nearly as good as the first one, and then we begin to notice that we're eating automatically. That is to say, not mindfully. And remember that if we're eating automatically and not mindfully, we don't communicate the signal to our body that we're getting full. And that's why often we can end up overeating. Then we check in and say, all right, how did I feel immediately when I stopped? Do I feel overfull? Do I feel okay? How did I feel when I stopped? And then, of course, lastly, how did I feel later? Half an hour later, an hour later, or even the next morning. That food timeline is so very important for you if you decide to go after some of the occasional or even foods that should be below the line. You must pay attention to the food dialogue. You must pay attention to the food timeline so that you can see how things are working. And the dialogue, as I said. Dialogue is so important. If you find the sugar monster, the food devil, and emotional hunger pushing you to eat a food, then pay really close attention to the techniques it uses. Notice that for some people, a rainy day is good enough. For other people, a tough day at work. For other people, it's a really great day at work. And when it really gets tough is when both of those things, like a tough day at work and a great work, you see, we have to look for all those triggering events and we have to remove them. We have to stop them from being an excuse. And one way to do it is to say, yeah, I did have a really great day at work today. And you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna eat a really great meal and celebrate it. I'm gonna give myself everything it needs. I'm gonna have the yummiest meal ever of healthy foods. So we pay attention to the dialogue. The minute the salesperson starts selling, we listen for the technique and we become aware of the manipulation so that we're in control. A strategy known is a strategy blown. Remember the car salesman? If I tell you every single thing that car salesman's gonna do, the minute you walk on the lot and he shakes your hand the way I told you, you're going, oh, look. Oh, I know what you're doing. Oh, that smile. Eric told me you were going to smile just like that. Eric said you would ask about my family. Eric told me that you would show me these cars and then offer me a choice instead of asking me if I wanted to buy. He said that you were going to say, would you rather have a car in red or blue? And I'm not going to hear your tricks anymore. I'm making my own decision. That's what you want to do with the food devil, if the food devil is still speaking to you. And it's entirely possible as we move into this week of living WildFit that some of that stuff might resurface for you. And so I want to arm you with that. So as we begin to move into the buffer zone, remember, it's your choice now. You can no longer blame me. There are no rules. You choose. What season do you want to be in this week? Right now, you may have a question about how do I cycle through the seasons. I don't want you to worry about that right now. We will address it next week. What I want you to focus on is what season do you want to be in this week? Here are the choices. You might decide to stay in deep spring. I'm doing it. I'm staying in deep spring. I've been doing well. I feel great. I'm staying in deep spring. You might do this because you have more weight you want to lose. You might do this because you're a peak performance athlete and you just love burning fat like this and having enduring power. Okay, deep spring. You may decide, you know what? I'm gonna go with a more natural spring. So I'm gonna have all the healthy stuff from spring, but I'm gonna have some root vegetables and maybe some of the sweeter vegetables as well, like peppers or carrots and that kind of stuff. Great. Or you might say, you know, I'm gonna do summer this week. I'm gonna do summer. So I'm gonna have all the spring stuff and some of the real spring stuff, but I might even have some more fruit, some berries. You know what? I might even have like pumpkins and squashes and maybe move into more of a fall type season. Some of you may decide to go all radical and say, this is my time for a fast, and you might want to go into winter. If you want to do that, remember, there's a full bonus video on WildFit's view on fasting, and there's a specific video that'll guide you through the process of going on a little mini 3-day fast. So you could choose winter. You decide what season you want this week, and you decide what level of adherence you're going to have to the overall principles of WildFit. Use your table. Are you getting enough WildFit essentials? Are you allowing some, optionals? Are you going fair with occasionals? And what are you doing with the nevers? What are you doing with the rejected stuff? What are you doing below the don't line, or are you? And that's the goal. The goal right now is for you to move stuff below the don't line. And you don't have to move it all there right now. You don't. Here's the thing. Right now, just you and me, I want you to tell me something. You say it. Now, I know that this is not a Skype call, but for a minute, I want you to think that it is. It's just you and me. Tell me something. Name one food that is below the don't line. One food that you know you'll never go back to. Ready? Here you go. Tell me. Excellent. Give me another one. Okay, so here's the thing. You may not have said anything out loud right now, and I feel like you didn't. So I'm going to give you another chance to do this, because if you say it out loud, the food devil's going to hear you. And the food devil's going to go, oh man, so I can't push on that one because it's below our identity. We just wouldn't do that, right? And so one more time. If you said it before, say it again. And if you didn't say it, just trust me on this. You've trusted me so far. Trust me on this. Tell me out loud when I say go, one of the foods that you're moving below the don't line. Even if it was below the don't line before, just say it out loud. Go. Give me another one. One more. All right. Now, here's the beauty. You may find this week that you're not really sure what should be the below the don't line. And you may experiment. Do you remember my experiment? Went to my girlfriend's house. She made all this dinner. She served ice cream. I was off ice cream for 6 weeks. I thought, why not? Why not treat myself? Little did I know I was talking about treating myself badly. And so I indulged. I indulged and I had consequences. And then I moved it below the don't line. So you may continue to move stuff below the don't line afterward. What you want to make sure is that once you've put it below that don't line, you don't let it come back. That is your objective for this week, is to live WildFit, choose the season you want to be in, choose your level of adherence. If you want to do your actual homework assignment and create yourself a little table and put foods in the essential, the optional, the occasional, and the don't line, just even if you put 4 or 5 foods in each category just to get your mind thinking that way, then you have achieved something. You can decide when it all begins because you have the buffer zone in front of you. And of course, because we're going to guide you through this, like I said, you're going on your first solo flight now, but I'm going to be in the tower and I'm going to be speaking to you every step of the way. So of course, I'll see you on Monday.